Okay, welcome to our club.
Girls Talk.
I just wanted to start off different. Welcome to Girls Talk. Today we're going to discuss another sensitive subject of boundaries and setting them. It is natural for some women to set boundaries and be able to say no, and for others it does not come naturally and is a constant struggle for fear of being rejected, not understood, being maybe disconnected from the rest of the collective. So we're going to discuss this as something that probably going into New Year is on the list for some of us to be able to set that outline of when do we draw the line.
New healthy habits.
New healthy habits, that's right. How about we ask Kim first? Does it come naturally for you to be able to set the boundary?
No, not always. And I can say that. And younger, I would tell you, oh yeah, I have lots of boundaries, you know. But as I've gotten, older and later in life, I realized I didn't set boundaries as well as I thought I did. I feel like I should have set better boundaries, and maybe things would have gone smoother or more cohesive, gone without a hitch, no flaws in how things went about. I feel like it's good to have boundaries. They protect you, they protect your sanity, and it also lets people know when there's just lines they just shouldn't cross. I end up building 60-foot walls instead of, just minor boundaries. But I think it's a very healthy habit to have.
Yeah.
What do you think, Radhika? Do you think that when women set boundaries, they may be afraid of being perceived as abrasive or standoffish?
Absolutely. I do think sometimes when setting those boundaries, you worry about people looking at you as whether you are trying to either control the situation or, just either standoffish, controlling, whatever the case is. But I think when you look at boundaries, we really do need to look at it more as when we set boundaries, kind of we mentioned in our previous episodes, is that it's things we put in place to keep ourselves in alignment instead of keeping people out. And I think that's where we probably need to kind of figure out, what is the reason we set boundaries? Because if not, then, that's when they're thinking, oh, as a woman, you are being abrasive or aggressive because you're trying to control me. I don't want to do that.
So that leads me into actually question the word aggressive. How can I come up? And I've been really waiting for this. Monique, do you think that aggressive is a negative for a woman?
I think that it can be perceived as being negative. So yes and no. And it all depends on in what situation you're in. Because sometimes I feel there's a need to be aggressive. And it especially if what you've put in place is maybe not being respected,
Absolutely.
But just right off the bat, just have an aggressive attitude. No, I don't think that that's something that you should do. But there is a time for when I feel it's necessary to be aggressive. Like if you're not being respected, if you're not being if the boundaries that you've set are not being respected or being ignored, then I think it's time for you to maybe step up and maybe assert yourself more a little bit, and if that causes you to be a little aggressive to some people, because I think it's also very subjective, because I could just be asserting myself and you can look at it as me being aggressive based on your perception of whatever the situation is. So I think it's very subjective.
Yes,
aggression in general.
Exactly. Yes, absolutely.
Do you think? So I want to ask Karee, because as a businesswoman, do you think aggression is a negative in a woman? Because we can take same behavior and apply it to different parts of our life, business, relationships. So when we talk about a businessman, He, we also praise him for being an aggressive businessman, aggressive salesman. How does it apply to a woman? How would it translate for a woman?
I mean, off the bat, I will say that it is a double standard, okay? I remember very clearly a gentleman saying to me, I think maybe this was somebody I was dating, but his comment was, I may have expressed that, it was a really tough day, have a lot going on. Man, I just wish I could just go take a vacation. Emotionally, completely all over the place. And his comment was, this is why, he's like, I don't want you to take this anyway, but this is why women shouldn't run companies. This is why women shouldn't, right? We all took it away, right? This is why women should not run businesses. And of course, in my mind, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to take it anyway. I would love to understand what that means. And he said, well, when it comes to running a business, women lead or tap so much into emotion that running a business requires the void of emotion. It is very logical, it is very analytical, and it's very as a matter of factly. And most women do not come from that place, right? They come from a whole different place. So when you run a company, you have to be firm on the boundaries, the things that you will and will not do, will and will not accept, right? And women tend to kind of move those lines a whole lot. And that's based on emotion, and so it creates a challenge in growing companies. My natural, of course, reaction initial was like, okay, this is a very interesting thought. I'd love to hear more about this, right? Because in my mind, as a woman who's been in business for a while, I've also been compared to a lot of things, and some of them not good. And not because I'm not a good person, but because the expectation or the perception of what I'm supposed to be as a woman running a company did not fall in line with the actions that you received. Because in that scenario, if what I did was done by a man, he would be
praised.
That's right.
Yeah.
It would be okay.
Yeah.
And I had to reconcile me in terms of, okay, there is business you and then there is regular you. And of course, if you know me now, I mean, those were all mushed together. Business me and regular me was all like one, right? So I led from a place of very diligently and it rolled over into my personal life too. And I think that's a whole other discussion, right? But I do think that what he said had a little bit of validity to it. But I think the reason I may think that it has validity is because society tends to give these qualities to men, and those are okay, and these qualities to women, and those are okay, right? But if a woman has some of those qualities, then she's a something, right?
So she needs to be labeled.
That's right.
She needs to be relabeled.
Exactly, realigned.
That's right.
Right?
Well, that seemed to be, what we basically have to work against.
Yeah.
And so, as a mother, is, and do you need to set boundaries to be able to, to be the mother to your children and to show the softness and then still be able to manage the chaos around you where you stand as an individual?
Yes. Now, as far as setting boundaries was foreign to me up until about 5 or 6 years ago. It was something that I did not do. I've never done. If I did, it wasn't done purposefully.
Yeah.
It was, and because as we discussed in one of our previous episodes, I am a doormat. And
You're not a doormat.
You're not a
Pleaser.
Recovering doormat.
No, we will not use that word.
And because of that mindset, it, left me open to fulfilling what, any desire that anybody had. But as a mother, I have found that I set very firm boundaries to protect my children. And that is where boundary setting has become very, very important for me. And also with my kids, I have 4 kids, and when they come home from school, it is loud and chaotic, and everybody's talking to me at the same time as I'm trying to read the dinner recipe, and the dog is going crazy, and my brain literally turns to mush. And I've had to tell the kids, when you get home, don't yell at me all at once, because I can't hear anything. My brain literally will not function. It will shut down. So you're going to have to just one at a time. If you're all yelling at me, you're not going to get anything. So just slow your roll and,
I got a question for you. When you mentioned that your kids, it was because of your kids why you had to become really cognizant of setting boundaries, you almost got emotional. Have you experienced challenges as you're building these boundaries to protect your kids?
Yeah.
Makes sense.
And the shitty part is those boundaries were being not just pushed, they were being straight stepped over by family members, people who claim to love my children. And so we have had to say, full stop, no, this is not okay. And so you will no longer have contact with my children, because you are putting them in a situation where you could harm them, or you could harm the relationship that I have with my children. And I will not allow that.
And even tying back to what Alana said, so do you think that their pushing up the boundaries is so much because of what the boundary is, or the fact that you're actually putting up boundaries?
Yeah, the fact that you're probably.
I think it's the fact that I'm putting up boundaries, but I think it's also a little bit of the fact that these family members, they want what they want when they want it,
So
and
you're
how they
putting
want
up
it.
Yep.
And you're not going to keep me from my family members. Yeah. Sorry.
Well, and that's why we discuss in this topic, because it touches basically on every aspect of our life. You threw in the word doormat, which is there are several words that I just cannot digest, and this is one of them. Another one is word toxic, and we will get to it because that's a whole different. But so I've encountered through both personal interactions with usually other women, actually. And in business, other people being referred to as a doormat, and which implied incredible degree of disrespect, and an assumption that you can get out of this person whatever you want at any particular time
Without regard.
and it's without regard. And it always rubs me a wrong way to hear it from a person that they regard other people as they're not allowed to have the boundaries, because you just basically can wipe your feet on them at any particular time. So I don't think they're naturally born doormats. They just do not exist. But these people tend to create themselves a cocoon that allows them to draw people to themselves by being just spineless, agreeable, because otherwise they feel they're not worthy of any type of relationship connection, or they cannot get themselves to like other people. And so is it important to set boundaries or to fit in, or we need to feel likable and no matter what? I mean, like, women tend to be more prone to needing that constant reassurance, I feel, or at least it's a perception that women want to feel reassured. So how do we manage the need for others to support us without being harsh, I guess? Being hard,
Yes, she is looking at
I personally have been called abrasive many times.
Yeah, me too.
This is probably one of the things I've heard the most in my professional life. They're very abrasive.
Abrasive, hard, disagreeable sometimes. So I used to have a hard time setting boundaries, but like we mentioned in previous episodes, like now that I'm a little older, I just don't care. So and boundaries are necessary, even like in how I interact with my children, how I interact with my mother, how I interact with my friends, how I interact with, even in dating now. I definitely have to set boundaries in, like how I interact with, people that I'm dating. So the question was, can I be abrasive or what? Like, what's?
Is it okay to be abrasive? I mean, do you have to really?
And this is the second time I'm answering this question today, and my answer is yes.
Good.
Because in setting the boundary, and I think you also mentioned just a little bit ago, I'm going to go back to the episode in which we spoke about like people pleasing. So yes, it's hard to. Well, it was hard. It's not hard for me to say this anymore, but not setting boundaries because you don't want to hurt a person's feelings or you want to be there for a person, when in reality, like setting a boundary protects the relationship, whether people see it like that or not, but it really protects the relationship in a way that, okay, so now, like Radhika said in the previous episode about communication. So now we can actually communicate on how we want things to go or what we want things to do, because now I know that this particular thing may affect you in this way. So now you know that this may affect me in this way. My mom and I had a conversation last night, and I'm going to be very brief. We were at a Christmas party, and she said, well, back in the day, parents and grandparents could say whatever they wanted to the kids, and what you said brought this to me, and I was like, well, back in the day, like there were no boundaries set as far as how we relate to each other. I said, so now if you're crossing that boundary that I've set as being a parent, then I have to address it because it's going to affect our relationship, and it's also going to affect my relationship with my child if I've said something, just like Lee said, if I've said something and now you're counteracting what I said. So it's almost like not validating how I feel in raising my kids. So it's not that you can't be the grandparent, but I have boundaries set in order to kind of protect my relationship with you as well as my relationship with my child moving forward. And I think it's okay to have that in every situation. As far as friendships, Korea and I have had this conversation several times about boundaries and, whatnot. And I think it helps the relationship in general.
Yeah. Yes. Also, to add to it, setting boundaries, it doesn't have to be abrasive or aggressive. You can set boundaries and still be kind about it, right? It's about how you say it, about still taking into account what you're saying, how it affects the individual, but still communicating your needs, right? And I think that's one of those things that we have the misconception that just because we set a boundary, we are intentionally hurting someone, or if someone's setting a boundary, they're intentionally trying to hurt me.
That's true.
That's not the case.
Boundaries are also meant to protect.
Exactly, and I think that's what we overlook the most. We look at boundaries as keeping things out, but in reality, we're setting them to protect, to allow us to build on. But we tend to look the very negative side of it. Exactly. So I really do think boundaries are a thing that we should all lean into, but it's setting those healthy boundaries, right? Like, you're really assessing, and like, I'll probably kick it back to you. I know they talk about setting healthy boundaries, which I'm one that I'm working on figuring out the healthy boundaries, how to, set them and effectively communicate them. That's a work in progress for me. But, so I'm definitely open to y'all kind of talking about that too, right?
Okay, so I will take the healthy boundary subject
And the fear of why you can set healthy, like that part, because I think that's it. Like when you figure out why is it that you are so afraid of setting these boundaries, that's where it's going to become clear.
Well, I think that comes actually out of the previous experiences that were traumatic. I mean, we're really going back to everything we have discussed today.
Absolutely.
And the fear of what may happen if the boundary is set. But we're talking about health. I believe boundaries are healthy, period.
Absolutely.
If they're negative or positive, but what is right for Kim may not be right for Radhika. What's right for Kari may not be right for Monique, because these are individual people here sitting here with different life situations and with different perceptions, with different situations. But I think one of the most important thing is, let's say we're talking about personal relation. Let's take a personal relationship between the partners. You and your partner, for whatever it may be. Maybe sometimes there is a fear of hurting the partner's feeling or rejection, where the other partner in the reality has no idea what's going on with you, and they would love to get a word on where the line lies with you. But they're also afraid to ask you about it, because that would be
Crossing the boundary.
that they in their mind have, but you've never defined that. Or we can bring a situation between a parent and a child, and I'm going to use an example out of my, in my own parenting, where I have a 5-year-old at the time mad at me for being grounded, for something very reasonable, and I'm telling him that, I have to take away whatever, because that's going to, make him feel nice. So I'm going to have to take it away, and you don't have it this weekend. And so as a 5-year-old, he's crying and sobbing and telling me, "You're not my friend." Well, honey, I am not your friend. I'm your mom. I am not your friend, but I'm your parent. And in order to teach you what I need to teach you is going to happen. So if you show me in the next 3 days
that you can
you can earn that back, I'll give it back to you. I still will not be your friend, though. And so it's really fun to watch a grown man, a bearded man that towers over me, being occasionally reminded I was not his friend. But it's worked. And we set the boundaries, and kids specifically tend to test the boundary now and then to make sure that it's still there, so they'll push against it. If it's a grade in school, if it's something with driving when they're not supposed to later on in life, it doesn't matter. Kids will test the boundaries. They're meant to do that, to learn cause and effect.
Absolutely.
Adults will test the boundaries in your, in your relationships to see where the kink in your armor is.
They're looking for a weakness,
Yes.
a flaw, an attack point. I'm impressed with my 11-year-old and her need to create boundaries at 11. And she is very vocal about them. And I would like to take credit for that. But she is her own person, but she's very independent, very vocal, has no qualm in hurting your feelings. Very much like her mother. But she is setting her own boundaries. And part of me was, I have to keep the peace. But this year, I've realized, no, I'm done keeping peace. She's not a little girl anymore. She's 11. And if she says, no, I'm not going, or no, I don't want to be around that person. No, I don't like this. I'm seeing it in a different light, because I'm like, okay, she's thought this out. There's a reason she's vocalizing and setting her boundaries. This is making her feel some type of way, and I need to respect that this is how she feels. Who the hell with everybody else who doesn't like the boundaries she's creating, because she's my priority. So this year I've gotten to a point to, well, fuck everybody else, and if they're upset with something that I said, or they don't like that I'm letting her do this is her choice now. And a lot of people don't agree with me on this year. I've gotten a lot of flack of, why are you backing her? Like,
because society typically in family relationships, it's like you can't set boundaries. As an 11-year-old, how dare you say you don't want to do, you don't want to go,
or you don't want to go.
And it makes you think you're not, because even like when I think of a child at 5 or 7 saying, no, I don't like this, or I'm unhappy, your immediate reaction is, but you're 5. Don't do it anyways. Right?
Exactly.
So it's almost like you're invalidating their feelings.
And that's where I got this year.
Yes.
I'm not going to invalidate her. If she feels this way and she says no, come pick a fight with me. You're not going to win.
So I have a question then, especially, I mean, we're talking about parenting now. How do you know that your child figured out that they can work you by doing this and they don't want to eat the broccoli?
Well, hers has never been about broccoli. Hers is more of, I don't want to go to this place. I don't want to be around these people or this person or that type of situation. Other things she doesn't, I'm like, girl, bye.
Yeah, because it'd be like, no, I don't want to pick up my room.
Yeah, no, I tell mine all the time, I am not your friend, I'm your mama. I don't care if you don't like me. We're good.
And there are certain things that, and I'm sure we all did it as children.
Mm-hmm.
And I know my kids have done it where, kind of like your son said, you're not my friend. And, you know, one of my kids one time, they used to say, well, you don't love me. Whenever they would get in trouble. And the first few times they said this, it killed me. And it was like a knife right through my little mommy heart.
Yeah.
And after a little while, I started to realize
They're manipulating.
this little shit is manipulating the hell out of
You
me.
didn't turn around and go, oh, no, honey,
And
I love you. I don't have to like
It
you right
finally
now.
clicked, and I was like, oh no. And the next time they said it, I said, mm-mm.
So did you call their own bluff?
Oh yeah, I called them out on it. And I said, well, if I don't love you, then you can go find a new mommy. I'll drop you off at Walmart.
No. I tell mine all the time. Do we need to go to the police station?
Oh Lord.
Do we need to
I
go?
did something that my mother-in-law taught me a long time ago. And so my son was 3 and dropped on me, I don't love you, because we couldn't pronounce a couple of letters, up until kindergarten started all the way. Anyway, and he was mad. And I said, okay. And he said, Dad, I don't want to live here anymore. I said, okay. And so we were getting ready to go on a trip to New Jersey. So we had he had like his own little carry-on. He went in his bedroom and he packed it. And he brought his teddy bear, Mr. the Bear, and he put a bag of chips in there and a blanket.
He had his nut.
And I said, okay. I just stood there. And we still lived in Sugarland at the time, and then we were in cul-de-sac, so I figured he can't get past the driveway.
No.
And I mean, he said, okay, bye. And I opened the door for him.
Oh.
And he went through the door with his little suitcase.
See ya.
And I saw him walking off the driveway and turn right to go to the, out of the cul-de-sac. And I thought, oh no. How far am I going to let this go?
How far is he going to go?
I mean, I followed him. He wouldn't see me, but I followed him past the mailboxes and all the way to the end of our cul-de-sac. And then I saw him turn around. I ran inside so fast. And he came back and he said, Mom, I'm sorry. It's never happened again. And he never told me that he doesn't want to live here anymore.
I guess he got down there and he's like, where am I going to go?
Who's going to make my snack when this snack runs out?
The reality of the road,
Yes.
Yes. So I felt like my mother-in-law taught me that she did it to her son, who was my husband. So, and same thing happened with Sam. So I just felt like this was appropriate time in his life to teach. His boundary laid at the end of the cul-de-sac. No matter what happened, this is how far he knew he could go before things really got real.
Yes. And be safe.
So I wonder how much of our resistance to set boundaries has to do with avoiding conflict. Because I know for me, a lot of the boundaries that I've set as of late have been as a result of conflict, which I hate. I avoid it, my ears get hot, and I don't like it. So how much of the resistance to set boundaries do you think is because we want to avoid conflict?
Well, boundaries are, so we were just having an off-screen discussion about that boundaries are usually set out of fear. And fear is, by itself, fear is an emotion that we have negative, associations with. So it goes back, we can backtrack to previous conversations about traumatic experiences that make us scared of certain situations, and then maybe that triggers us not wanting to set the limits of where that chalk line is drawn around you, that your limit that you cannot tolerate anymore.
But I think that goes both ways. I think you can go either left or right. I think you can also be highly confrontational after that too, to avoid that response or that situation, because I think my past triggers have caused me to be highly confrontational at this point. And whereas other people can come in, like Lee's my peacekeeper. Anytime I am mad and lit and I will chew everybody up and spit everybody out, she's my voice of reason. And she's like, Kim, wait a minute. Don't kill everybody. Think about this for a second. What if they meant, and I'm like, well, they could mean that, but I'm still out for blood. Like it's just
right. You want to go for the kill,
and I do,
and that's your boundary, though.
But it is. That's how I set my boundaries. Which goes back to being aggressive in setting your boundaries, and what you were saying earlier, and how sometimes it is okay to be aggressive when you're setting boundaries, and how people perceive it.
Well, and so usually, guys, we touched on this little bit earlier on in this conversation, but men are all just conditioned to be aggressive. We want them to be manly. We want them to be aggressive, and women are usually, conditioned since they're little to be soft and peacekeepers. And girls are usually girls are more nurturing than boys. Yes. And there have been multiple studies done where they've put kids in the room and just observed them through a black mirror, basically playing with toys. And girls tend to wrap their dolls and like rock them, and if they give the same toys, and boys will use it as a hammer usually to put the Lego in. It's just practical. Yep. But there's definitely certain biological factors that go into behaviors that then we naturally encourage on both sexes, but so coming into adulthood, it's not always possible or conducive to sane living to always offer that softness. And so but then you go in against the perception that people, have against you. If you look certain way, if you're this petite woman that came into the room and then you tell them no.
They don't accept
it, and they may be going to judge you based on why you came in. She's abrasive. She's a bitch. She's too aggressive. She's not a right fit. However, a gentleman can come in that will have all the same credentials, and he will be praised for being aggressive and introducing the same idea. He will verbatim repeat everything you said, and he will be praised for it. So there is definitely, a battle reciprocating. And Radhika touched on you don't have to be abrasive about how you set the boundary. I'm going to disagree. You have to do you.
Yeah.
Whatever works, because when you start thinking about whose feelings you have hurt, you've been passive aggressive, or how it's me. That in my book at least, because the sooner you put your cards on the table and set that fire line, the sooner the behaviors they either will stop or they will modify to accommodate the situation,
or who it is in the situation in which you're needing to set the boundary. I think that's maybe that maybe decides what path you take. Like if you've had a negative relationship with this person, you may need to be a little bit more aggressive coming in and not. So I think it's situational.
Yes, true. It's a trigger thing.
Hold on, though. I think we are getting. All right, I might be wrong, so I'll put that out there first. Aggressive and assertive, two different things. And I know, but I feel like we're saying you have to be aggressive to set those boundaries. But you don't have to be aggressive. You have to be assertive. Like, this is what I stand for. This is where it stopped. That's not aggressive. This is me asserting myself because I am not backing down. Aggressive is me doing all sorts of extra things, throwing this and doing that and da. That's aggressive because now you're putting in extra stuff you don't need to. I'm standing firmly. This is what I say. either you respect it or you don't, and if you don't, I will naturally walk away.
I think they get seen as one and the same though,
But
because
that's
people
the-
misinterpret
But
the
that's
situation.
the problem, and that's what we need to correct as a group, though.
Aggressive I feel, is a response to a prior trigger that the person brings on. Because if this is somebody who you've been expressing this boundary to, and they've repeatedly pushed back at it, and repeatedly, you are going to naturally feel the need to be aggressive to like stomp it down, right? I think that's where aggression comes in, but I do agree that you can, being assertive about your boundaries is where it goes. But here's part of the challenge. The challenge is, if you truly don't believe you have the right to make that boundary, express it, and then say, Sarah, que sera? It is a boundary. You get what I'm saying? I don't have to justify it.
No.
I don't have to explain it. I don't have to finagle your beliefs. I don't have to finagle your emotions.
No is a complete sentence.
No is a complete sentence.
Girl.
My boundary is complete.
Mm-hmm.
You may be my mother and I love you, but it is the boundary. You get what I'm saying?
Period.
That is different. But if you are wiggly on the boundary, and then people feel the need to keep coming back at you with this boundary, keep trying to push back at the boundary,
The aggression comes out.
That's right,
Yeah.
because your trigger may create that reaction. And listen, now I've got to stomp this
Yeah.
down.
That's what I go. That's
Yeah.
what I said is situational.
Yeah.
You know, and again, something that I also said earlier is that like assertive, aggressive is subjective, because I could be being assertive and you can look at it as me being aggressive.
It's all up to
It's
interpretation.
how you perceive it as me. No, I'm not being aggressive. I'm asserting myself, letting you know da 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 da. But you say, oh wow, she was very aggressive in saying that, because how you perceived it through your lenses is me being aggressive.
I believe that, first of all, boundary implies rigid rule, physical object. It's something that stops. Okay, that doesn't matter what the
Creates a
situation. It creates a firm
Cut.
barrier, or cut, or a ditch, or I don't know, something that says stop, halt, and different people will perceive it. You know, some people can take aggressive. I don't believe aggressive and assertive or interchangeable words, but my perception of what's happening can be different as Monique's at this particular moment. However, it is necessary in this particular time to create that firm, rigid object to avoid more difficult situation. And I believe, and I think it should be real, people should not care about how other person may perceive them, but set the rule, set the boundary, and then work on explaining and and just affirming it that from now on.
Yeah.
And then if somebody has a problem with it, they would have had problem with it anyway. And and that's it.
Let it be.
That's right.
You
Just let it
can't
be.
please
You
everybody.
That's right. You've got a problem with my
Yes.
boundary. You've got a problem with my boundary.
And no
Move
is a
along.
full sentence.
Yeah.
No is a full sentence. And I think it's setting boundaries is crucial. It's a beginning of being well and being well adjusted and living your best fulfilling life as an individual, as a woman, as a whole. And relationships with other people are healthier because of you do have open set of rules that translatable to everybody around you, so they know how to act around you.
Yeah.
They're not mind readers.
It helps you to find peace.
Yes.
And expectations.
Yes.
So boundaries are really important to protect you. And then to also protect the relationship. So it's healthy and positive and forward moving. That's how I look at it.
That's right.
Yeah.
As I stated earlier.
Yes. If she stated it like this. There we go.
Thank you very much for visiting with us today. Thank you. We would like for you to subscribe.
Like, share,
like us,
comments.
share us, give us some
Absolutely.
comments,
Give us
your
topics.
feedback.
Yeah.
Provide us some topics. That's right, Kim. The great idea. Let us know what would you like for us to discuss next. We'd love to hear from you. Have a
Until
great
our
day.
next episode.
Bye.
Bye.